Excuse me for having an interruption. So this, in case there's a lack of flow, I just want you to know that I had to step away and come back. So we were on the return on investment. So um, as far as the return on investment goes, we looked at some of these differences in the um, trailer. I'm going to share my screen again. We looked at some of the different combinations for loading trailers. So we looked at that. Again, you can see the different colors and part numbers associated with those. And you can see how many fit on a trailer by truck, just to give you an idea of some of the different combinations that you can use to do that. And then as far as doing the return on investment, as we move through here, we've got the like some examples here on what the cost comparison would look like for proposed returnable packaging for this particular new program. So again, this is from these, I mentioned how big some of these spreadsheets are. So this is taking information from a bigger spreadsheet, just taking the columns that are most relevant, and we'll go through that. Again, this one is a panel with lights, and that quantity that you see is the 2425. So just keep a note of some of these numbers here. You've got the length of the unit load, you got the height of the carton, height of the unit load, you've got the number of parts, net weight, tear weight, all those sorts of things, gross weight, information as far as the maximum number in the trailer, so on and so forth. So you have an example, it shows you how big, this is a big spreadsheet and they're taking only the relevant data for this. That is for the expendable packaging. And then you have similar information for the returnable container as far as the weights, the heights, the dimensions, number of in the trailer for the returnable containers, total parts per trailer, so on and so forth, and freight information as well. You can see here, this is the returnable cost over 5 years. It's the $5.2 million, 5,256,260 to be exact. And then when you go again to the returnable container, you look at that similar information, you can see here, they've got information on the total investment. And they look at what's called like the 5-year amortization schedule, which is where they break that over 5 years. They take the cost and they either break it out evenly or they slide it down. But for this one, it looks like they're just breaking it out each year. For the 5 years, they're taking a fifth of that total cost and breaking it down. And then you've got the cost per unit, the CPU, cost per day, per year, what this would cost for 5 years. You can see is 903,561 versus the 5-year cost for the expendable packaging was over $5 million. You can see here, they've calculated how much you're saving each day by using the returnables, also how much you're saving each year, and then the 5-year savings. So basically they're going to take the 5.2 million number and the 900,000 number and subtract that, and you should come up with the number. So that you get here for the 5-year save. All right, so the result is doing that return on investment calculation, and you can see that return on investment is 4.8, which is a fairly good number. So, almost 5 times savings compared to the other one. Okay, so here you have a basic glossary of what those different abbreviations mean, like which one here? I think the one that was like jobs per day, right? It shows up on here. Where did I see that? Right here, jobs per day, right? So that's how many units or, that they're making per day. That's 2,425. So it shows you here, jobs per day. That's the total number. It tells you that the number of cars built by that per day, and then the number of parts per vehicle. And what the take rate is. So this is, again, you might have something on the vehicle where you have multiple parts, like fasteners or screws, but then you also could have headrest. You might have, 2, 3, or 4 headrests, depending on that vehicle, that are exactly the same. But that means that, it tells you how many jobs per day that they have. Parts per vehicle is the number of times that same part is used. Like I mentioned before, for example, fasteners, door handles, take rate, that is how many of these parts you're using per day. And it's a percent. So if it's 1, the take rate is that 100% that all the vehicles have it. I mentioned things like fenders here. I mentioned before also, like door handles, I've mentioned in the past. Those are some things that, you'll see on the car, every single car. But other things, this mentions an example of sunroof, or maybe you have, different stereos or sound systems or Bluetooth systems that every car isn't the same one. Some cars maybe get a DVD player, but other ones don't. But all cars are going to have seat belts and headrests and steering wheels, for example. Okay, so in the expendable packaging data, you've got a glossary here. You've got the unit load length, information on unit load, the carton height, the unit load height, parts per unit load. It's basically going to be like your parts per pallet. The weight, you've got the net weight is the total weight of the unit load. So you calculate that by taking so for the unit load net weight, you're going to take the weight of the part, and then you're going to multiply that by the number of parts per unit load. So if that part weight is 5 pounds and you're going to have, 20 pounds per unit load, you'd say 5 times 20. This example gives you the 3 by the 20 and get 60 pounds. So that's going to give you that weight. Your tare weight for the pallet, they tell you it's 24. You get that from the chart. You've got the carton tare weight, which that is going to be 2161. Now that here in this particular instance, they are taking the carton weight and they're adding the dunnage that's inside the box to get that tare weight for the carton, because they want everything that's in the carton related to packaging, and they want the tare weight of that whole primary pack, basically. Then you've got your total tare weight. So you're going to take the tare weight of the pallet, which was calculated to be 24 pounds, you're given that. And then you're going to take the tare weight of the carton. So you're going to take the 24 plus the 21.61 pounds to come up with a total of 45.61 pounds. And then you also have your gross weight, which is the unit load gross weight. And that's calculated there with that net weight plus the total tare weight. So they're taking the net weight, which is 60, which you get from up here, which they calculated by saying the part weight by the parts per unit load. And then they're adding that to that total tare weight. And you can see this adds up pretty quickly. This adds up to 105.61 pounds. You also have information about the stack height in the trailer of the unit loads. So this one shows they're stacking 3 high. The max number in the trailer is going to be 84. Parts per trailer, we can go through all this, but basically once they have all that information, they can, calculate the cost per unit for the freight. So they can take that freight cost per unit, and that's going to be the 625 divided by 1680 to get the 37, just over 37 cents per part. So remember the 625 is that calculated, or that what was calculated earlier to figure out what the cost is per truck for the freight. And then that 1680 is going to be your related to your unit. You've got the package cost here, which was calculated earlier. You've got your CPU cost per unit package cost. So you can take the package cost and divide it by the number of parts per pack. And then you get your total cost per unit. So that's going to be that total packaging plus the cost for the cost, and then the freight of the cost per part. Now, this is where being friends with your purchasing department is helpful, because they can give you that information, and they give you very accurate information, because those costs are all kept up to date in the purchasing department, or the purchasing or sourcing, it may be called sourcing. So here you also have your cost per day, you have your cost per year, and you have the 5-year cost as well. So you can take that 5-year cost, so you get your cost per year. So basically you take your cost and divide it by, or multiply it by 5, I'm sorry. So you're going to take that $1 million times 5 to get the 5.256, 260 for your total, for your cost. Here's some other information, just like the glossary. There's a lot of information here. Tomorrow, my plan is to go through the homework, because a lot of this will be helpful for the homework. These are pieces of information that you will have access to, and you can reference as you go through the homework. So once you go through all this, again, I'm going to go back through this, but you got, your information for returnable containers that's in that chart. So this is basically breaking down what's in the chart, all the things we calculated before, combining all that information, and then coming up at the end, you can have your 5-year amortization cost per unit. You have your total investment, you have freight cost per unit. So you'll see in this particular one, you'll notice that they're doing cost per unit. So you want to know, for each unit, which in this case could be like your per part, it will calculate, you can calculate all that, and you can do a comparison to say, for an expendable pack, I'm paying, this much per part for packaging. So basically what they're going to take this, and if you have 100 parts in here, they'll divide this whole cost, everything you've calculated, cost for the packaging, cost for freight, everything, and then divide it by the number of units in the pack. And they can, you can calculate this based on amortization. You can take this so many different ways, and every company's a little different on the information that they look for or that they take. So for this, it's important to know all these things, because sometimes companies might end up working on packaging numbers for their cost justifications and do their ROIs, but some companies may use other information. So you might find that you worked at one company, and some of the information that they focused on, maybe one company focuses on cost per unit, which in some cases would be very helpful. You go to another company and they don't really necessarily use cost per unit. They may have some trouble trying to figure out what exactly, what's the best way to go. And you might be able to say, hey, I'm going to look at this from a cost per unit as well. It's not just a total cost. And that may change their decision as well, may help them make their decision. Also things like, how much money you're saving over time. It could be how much you're saving per unit, or it could be how much you're saving over a 5-year period, or it could be how much you're saving per year. So, those are just some of the different combinations that you can come up with. This information can be very powerful, and you come up with a lot of different information. So here you've got, in the end, you've got your return on investment. It's taking the cost over 5 years for the expendable, subtracting out the costs over 5 years for the returnable, and then dividing that by the returnable cost for 5 years. And they come up with the answer of 4.8. That's how they calculated in the end that return on investment. So again, you're going to take the 5,256,260. So basically 5.2 million, or rounded up to 5.3 million. And taking that cost, subtracting the 5-year cost, which is the 900,000 right here. And then once you have that number, then you would divide this, the 5.2 million minus the 900,000 number, divide that by that 900,000 number, and that is how you come up with the 4.8 for your return on investment. Here's some other ones. So what I'll do is tomorrow I will finish up with this and I will cover the homework. So if you have questions, remember we've got office hours. You can always jump on these live tapings. I think though next week I probably won't be live taping because I'll be doing some traveling. So I'll probably film these ahead of time, but just to give you a heads up, I'll know for sure by tomorrow, or I'll post it on D2L. So you'll have that, but I hope you enjoyed this. This is a lot of, I know it's your heads are probably spinning. It's a lot of numbers, but once you start doing these, they'll make a lot of sense. What you're seeing a bunch of formulas. You're seeing basically possibly every way these ROIs can be calculated. Just, every company is a little different, just so you can see all the different scenarios. Everyone likes a little bit differently. Every company has their own style, but this way, what you're learning, you could calculate pretty much any style, any format that people are looking for. And you can also kind of slice and dice your numbers. People can look at it and get a different idea about what's going on. So again, I hope this was helpful. I hope you are learning. I know your head's spinning. If you have questions, you can always reach out to me. And again, I will see you tomorrow. All right, bye-bye.